Welcome back to the Poker Pilot. Last time you saw me, I was at the MGM Grand in Detroit where I got even for my trip. Moving on now over to good old Southern California where I plan to check out the gardens. But here's the thing, I don't have much time. Just an hour and a half to play before flying back out, and the session was not that exciting. In fact, I felt like half the time I just sat there as the players got up for their coffee breaks. Just the reality of morning poker, and if I featured more than just the following hand, I think I'd be doing a disservice to you, my viewers. But this one was just weird. You gotta see it. I start the camera a little late here, but as you can see, it's ace jack of diamonds and I'm in the small blind. The small stakes game here at the Gardens is pretty short stacked at just a $200 cap at the 2-3 game, so it's an interesting dynamic. The button opens the action at 15 and I bump it up to 60 bucks, which he calls. Off to a flop heads up, which is 4-6-9 with 2 hearts. Pretty much a miss, besides having 2 overcards, so I could probably go either way between just checking or making a c-bet here. I didn't come here for a fast session though to play passively, so I bet $40, which the button calls. Turns the queen of hearts, not helping me at all, but you know what? I'm just gonna attempt a bluff shove for my remaining $68 anyway and hope he doesn't have a flush. But he snap calls and I basically announce punt confirmed.
You're so good.
River comes the 4 of hearts, and now I beat basically nothing. He says he doesn't have a heart. I say I don't either. I turn over my hand since I was the aggressor, and he mucks. He claims he had Jack 10 and black cards for the missed straight draw, and I take this one down with just ace high on a board with 4 to a flush on it. Weird. And that's a wrap for my quick session at the Gardens. Seriously, you wouldn't care about any of the other hands I played here, so I'll just spare you from them. They were open the action, c-bet, and take it down. Just take my word for it. I was in for 200 and out for 349 here, which isn't bad for an hour and a half at a highly raked, low-stakes SoCal game. Right, that was pretty much just for the lols. I think I'll check it out later when it's more at peak hours. Now off to the next spot. Welcome to Vero Beach, Florida, basically a stereotypical retirement town. About a half hour from here is Card House, Port St. Lucie, funny enough located directly next door to a church. What can I say about my time here? Well, not much. This session may have been even more boring than my one back in California. Question to my audience for the future. Leave these in or just report the results and move on. For now, you get this hand, which is totally unexciting, but still the most significant one of the session, which says a lot. I've got pocket 7s in the cutoff and the $5 straddle is on. There's an earlier position open to $15, 2 callers, and I'm coming along too to hopefully spike a set. The button straddler is priced in with basically any 2 cards now, and we're 5 ways to 9-4-4. No set, but still second pair. The pre-flop raiser bets out and it's for a whopping $10. Folds to me, and look, I'm continuing with almost everything for that price. I call. Surprisingly, it's now heads up to the turn, which is a 5. Opponent now bets 20. He was caught bluffing earlier and he's giving me nearly 5-1 on a call, so whatever. I stick the chips in again. If he has a 9, so be it. River's an ace and he checks. I could bluff, but if he has a 9, he's not going to fold, and I have a sliver of showdown value, albeit less now with the ace out there. I just check it behind and lose to 9-7 off. Yep, that was the monster he raised pre-flop with from early position, and that's literally the most significant hand of the night. Similar to the Garden session, I'll just spare you the details of the non-vlog-worthy hands. I experienced card death for my couple of hours here and dropped from 300 to 106. The room was also dead tonight, but I can tell it has potential to be more exciting on a bigger night. I'll come back some other time and hopefully have a more exciting session, but now, let's get to some real hands somewhere else. At Stewart Field, north of New York City, which happens to be about a 40-minute drive to Resorts World Catskills. This session thankfully had some things to talk about. I start off with $500 this evening, and we're going to start off with a fun one here. I start off recording as we go to the flop, but the free flop action had a limp from under the gun, an open to 10 on my end, a call, and a 3-bet to 30 from the hijack. I decide to go set mining here, and it's a 5-way pot to a very nice flop of 10-7-5 with 2 hearts. Always exciting to flop a set. If it was a heads-up pot, I'd just bet, but having so many others in the pot, I go with a check with devious intent. We all check to the 3-better who bet 75 bucks. Now it folds to me, and it's time for the fun part. He's got 175 left, but I want to go slightly higher than that on the off chance the low jack wants to make a cold call with a flush draw. I make it 200 to go, but the low jack has nothing, so he's out. It's back to the hijack, who thankfully makes the call, and we're off to a run out.
Quad five. That's it. Oh, he had a big. I thought he had a.
Quads on the vlog, I love it. I also cracked his aces in dramatic fashion, and we drag in a good mid-sized pot here. Only thing that would have made it better is if there was more money at stake, but I guess poker players will always find something to complain about, right? In this one, from +1, I got king jack of clubs and open things up to 12. It gets all the way to the small blind, who 3-bets to 30, and for that much, I'm gonna continue with pretty much anything I open up with, especially in position. So when big blind folds, I complete, and we're off to a flop, which comes pretty good for me, I'd say. 8 king jack with 2 spades. Small blind unfortunately checks, but I also can't let this streak go without attempting to build this pot up, so I put $30 across the line, which the small blind very quickly calls. Turns the 10 of hearts, which isn't great. Ace queen is now straight, and it also brings a second flush draw on board, but he's only got 115 left, the size of the pot, so I'm just gonna go with it here. If he has me beat, then so be it. Still plenty to get value from, and he does eventually make the call. We both decide to turn our hands over, and he's got pocket queens, so we're not out of the woods totally, as we do have to fade an ace, a 9, or one of the 2 remaining queens. But it doesn't matter, as the river brings a totally irrelevant 4 of diamonds. A valiant battle from the small blind here, but in the end, king jack holds up here, and we take a nice little pot. And finally, from under the gun, I pick up the second best hand ever created. Unless you're me, of course, and you pick this up 4 times in a single year when someone else has the first best hand ever created. Anyway, I put 12 in and 5 other players call, which is always fun. Family pot to thankfully no ace. Queen 10-7 with 2 diamonds. The blinds check, and I'm going to hopefully get someone with a queen to go to Value Town, so I bet just a 3rd pot to entice those hands to stick around. We do get 1 caller, and we're off to a turn. Heads up now to the deuce of clubs. Really shouldn't change anything, so I size a little bit up now and bet 75. This is unfortunately too much for him though, as he lets his cards go. But hey, it's nice to pick up kings and have them hold any day of the week. And that's going to wrap up my session in upstate New York, and it was a decent one. I played for 4 hours, was in for 400, out for 939 for a profit of 539 this evening. I'm going to do something a little different now. That session at Resorts World Catskills was my last one of that particular trip. But since Gardens and Port St. Lucie weren't much to talk about, I'm going to keep this video going into my following work trip, especially since it's taking me so long to get this released. As far as my results for this one goes, I played at 6 different card rooms, got 26 hours of table time, and eked out a $623 win over those hours. Now on to the next trip. Back to Los Angeles we go to start off a fresh trip. As was eventually going to happen, we're going to start getting some repeat casinos in this series, but it's about the game just as much as it is about featuring new places, isn't it? And I love Hustler Casino, so what can I say? Let's hop into another 2-5 game. By the way, I got a little something to hold my vlogging supplies in. Coincidentally, now I look like a real poker player, don't I? Starting this fresh trip with Queen 10 of clubs under the gun. I like suited Broadway cards a lot, so I start off with an open of 15, which invites 4 players to join the fun. Multiple way action to Queen Jack 6 with 2 hearts. It's hard to make a pair in poker, let alone top pair, so when small blind checks to me, I'm going to start building a pot here and bet $40. Folds to the cutoff, who surprises everyone by just jamming his entire $230 stack into the middle. Nobody else wants the smoke, and now I've got a decision to make. Yeah, there's a lot of merit to folding right now, but let's think a little more about that. If he flopped a set, wouldn't he raise for way less to not scare me off? On top of that, there's just no way he has a set of queens, as he 3-bet that pre-flop and there's only 1 combo left. A lot of people flat call jacks pre-flop these days, but it still seems unlikely in this case. Only set I can see him having is 6s. Other than that, he could just be jamming with a flush draw or a straight draw, so you know what? I'm gonna go for it here. I'm ahead of draws, or at least flipping with them depending on what they are, so I make the call, and we're off to the races. The board runs out 7 of diamonds, 10 of diamonds, and we're good versus King 10 for the missed open-ended straight draw. Always nice to pick off a semi-bluff and hold. This one was kinda weird. I'm in the cutoff with 7s. The low jack limps, then hijack opens to 30. I have a pair, I'm in late position, I call. The small blind, +1, and the low jack all call, so we're going 5 ways to a flop. A set would be fantastic right now, but unfortunately it doesn't come. The flop is 2-3-4 rainbow. Now, the small blind just out of nowhere jams his $150 stack in right away for a full pot-sized bet into 4 other players. Folds all the way to me, and well, given he just flatted pre-flop, what super strong stuff could he realistically have here? If he has an ace, he's drawing to a gut shot straight. He could just be saying screw it and jamming with 2 random overcards. He could have even flopped a random 4. If he had flopped a set, I think with 4 others in, he'd rather check and let others do the betting for him. So this is another spot where I actually think I've got the best hand most of the time. I'm getting 2-1, so I only have to be right a third of the time to break even. I call. Board runs out a 9 and a king, and he shows ace-4 offsuit for flop top pair top kicker. My 7s are way good. I take this one down.
1 kilo bet, table 24.
Which leads me to this doozy of a hand right here. For context, the guy we'll be playing against is having one of those nights where he cannot miss. He's running roughshod against the whole table and has a full stack of $100 chips along with all his $5 chips at this 2-5 big blind cap game. So that being said, I pick up this good looking hand under the gun and open things up to 15. The low jack and small blind, who is Mr. Luckbox over there, make the call. 3 ways to king 6 with 2 hearts. Well, I've got a flush draw. Kings are good for my range, so when Luckbox checks to me over there, I continue with a $25 bet, which both opponents call. Gonna plan on shutting down now if I don't hit my draw, but it doesn't come to that as one of the best cards in the deck peels off, the Ace of Hearts. I'm sitting here with the second nut flush now, and it's time to double up against Mr. Luckbox and his ace or trip kings. He checks, I bet 85 now, low jack's finally done here, and Mr. Luckbox continues. I've got him right where I want him now. River's a completely irrelevant 3 of clubs, a total brick, and Mr. Luckbox decides his trip kings are good enough to go after my entire stack. He just open rips, almost double pot for my nearly $500 stack. Trust me when I say, I'd usually overfold to big overbets like this without the stone nuts, but against this player, on this hand, I'm not going to shy away. I basically snap him off. He reveals his cards, and when I see the king, I'm initially really happy about that. The problem though, is his other card was a stupid 6. He smooth plays the whole time until the river, then goes for the absolute max versus all of my flushes, and he ended up being totally right. I'm telling you, this guy could not miss. He was just having one of those nights, and now I'm in a position where I've got to buy back in for another bullet. But thankfully it's not all bad from there. For example, on this one, I ended up flopping a set of 9s, got a street of good value on the flop too. My opponents did end up folding to my bet on the turn, but it was a good recovery hand. I got more back in other ways too and called it a day after a semi-marathon session of nearly 8 hours. Today I was in for 1,000 and out for $11.98 for just about a $200 profit. Anytime you get sent down to the felt and still end up leaving the casino a winner is a time to be grateful. For now, it's time to leave the West Coast and go all the way back across to see the other ocean. I've been wanting to come visit this place. I've seen the live stream from here and I've heard good things. I feel like playing 2-5 again, so I sit down with a grand, the max. It's literally my first hand sitting at this table when... oh, crap. Pause. Now, why am I in a state of unease right now? Historically on this channel, if Pocket Kings is my very first or very last hand, bad things happen. I know he's calling no matter what. I just hope to the heavens it's not aces. I take a deep breath, say those 2 words, and then he snap calls. It's taking a little too long to show. Does he have queens or ace king suited? No. He has aces. Alright, let's get to work. After a limp, the low jack, who's going to be the villain in this hand in more ways than one, you'll see what I mean, opens the action to 35. I'm next with an obvious 3-bet incoming, and I choose to tread lightly, seeing as how I literally just sat down, and I make it 90 to go. Only the low jack makes the call, and we're heads up in position to a flop of 8-3-4 with 2 diamonds. He checks, and this flop is totally safe enough, so I continue for $90, which he calls. On a turn of the 10 of hearts, he checks again, then begins some speech play.
I know you have the workflow.
Not gonna let you into my head, man. Maybe you'll have a set sometimes here, but there's still plenty of worse stuff to get value from. Jacks, 9s, flush draws, etc. I size up, going 250 here to set up the river shove if he calls. He does, then checks dark, and now it's off to a river, which brings in the king of diamonds. Oh boy. Okay. Here's where I'd like to warn all you guys who might be new to poker. This card in the moment looked like a gold mine. Hindsight is 20/20 though, but this card is actually horrible. Not only did it complete the flush draw, but it would make it really hard to now get value from pocket pairs smaller than mine. So that being said, don't fall into the trap that I fell into in the moment. My brain saw me hit a set in this large pot and thought it was my time to shine. I make arguably the dumbest all-in I've made in a long time, get snapped off, and after proudly displaying my hand, get shown freaking Queen 10 of diamonds. As if that wasn't bad enough, I get the needle.
I told you, think slow. I told you. I warned you, dude. It's okay.
Yeah, big shot. Very funny. Don't spend all that money in one place, unless it's in another pot with me where I have a hand that can survive rivers. First hand and last hand kings, still cursed. It's such a discouraging blow to go into a poker session all hyped up, only to lose all your chips in 10 seconds, knowing that you'll be spending the rest of the night just trying to crawl out of the hole you just dug. Off to the gauge for a rebuy. So dumb. Alright, fresh buy-in, time to crawl back. About 40 minutes after the Kings debacle, I pick up Ace-5 of spades in the cutoff. Only action before me is a limp, so I make it 20 to go. Gets to the small blind, who pauses, and when that happens, you know a raise is incoming. He makes it a textbook $80. Folds to me, and this should probably be a 4-bet bluff or fold situation, but at the time I figured, suited ace, positional advantage on a small blind versus cutoff situation, I'll just call and see what happens. Heads up to Ace-King Deuce with 2 diamonds. I've got top pair, but when you don't have a kicker and you're up against a 3-better, things can get dicey. It gets even more dicey when small blind continues for a rather large flop sizing, betting 125. This could get ugly. The board favors him, but I didn't call his 3-bet to then flop top pair and fold. I decide to call and see what he does on the turn. I've got devious intent. If he checks turn, I'll pounce. The turn's the 9 of spades, which seems safe enough for this plan, and he does indeed check. I bet 275. I know there's technically no such thing as a value bluff, but that's what this feels like in practice. Get non-believing queens or jacks or flush draws to call, or make better aces fold. He eventually lays his hand down, and this one gives me a rebate for that first hand. There's some ups, some downs. Overall, this second bullet at this point is now in the slight loss column, and I've got a stack of about 750 for this one. With one limp, I look down at Big Slick in the low jack. I make it 20 and get 2 callers, including the limper who's going to be the significant opponent in this hand. 3 ways to a flop, which ends up giving me top pair, top kicker with 2 hearts. A very good flop for me, both for range and for actual hand, so when it checks to me, I'm definitely betting. I go with 30, which both opponents call. Now the turn is where things get interesting. It brings in the Queen of Hearts. Brings in the obvious flush draw, but when the original limper checks, I'm going to continue betting here and I size up to 125. Guy to my left folds, and now, of course, the main villain springs her trap and rips it in my face. It's going to be my whole remaining stack of 575 to see the river, and I'm sitting here with top pair, top kicker, and the nut flush draw. What a gross spot. It might seem like a slam dunk call, but this opponent is not making this big jam with anything less than top 2 pair. That means I'm behind and I'm gonna have to hit either a heart or an ace, giving me 12 outs. Translated into my approximate equity, or my chances of winning the hand if I call, it's about 24%, but for simplicity, we'll just call it 25. That means to break even on my call long term, I'll need 3-to-1 odds on my money. Right now it's 575 to win 850, so nowhere close to that. Unfortunately, as strong as my hand would usually be, it's clearly shriveled up here and I have to let it go. My opponent offers to show, and of course I'm not going to say no to that. And she shows King Queen. Oh my land, King Queen sucks so much. But Poker Pilot, King Queen in this case is winning the pot. Well, is the pot being pushed my way or to my opponent? I stand by it. King Queen sucks. Now, I may have lost that hand, but overall for this session, you'll have to take my word for it. I scooped a clutch, double board, no limit bomb pot towards the end of the session to bring me up within reach of my $2,000 buy-in, but I didn't record it. Look, those are just too much work given the graphics that would have to go into it, and it already takes a long time as it is to animate a simple hold'em hand with one board. Maybe in the future when I'm big enough to hire an editor, I'll start recording and including those. On that note, help me get big enough. If you're not subscribed, consider clicking that button down there if you find my stuff entertaining. It helps a ton and I greatly appreciate every new sub. Over 4.5 hours here at Best Bet, I was in for 2,000 and out for 1,532. Given that I was stacked on my first hand, this nearly feels like a win. I'll take it. That's all for this one. Don't worry, I haven't stopped. I just really need an editor. For now, go ahead and watch one of my other videos, either here or here. Thanks for watching.